He said it while folding his polo shirt. Calm, casual, like he was reading a weather forecast. No one else will want you, Renee. Not at your age. My name is Renee Lawson. I'm 49 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge. I stood there with a warm towel in my hand and a mouth full of disbelief. Not sadness, not rage, just that quiet, sinking feeling you get when something confirms what you already feared, that you've disappeared inside your own life. The sound of the dryer hummed low behind me, like background noise in a memory. I could smell lemon detergent on the clean clothes, faint grease from the fish I'd fried earlier, and that sharp hint of pine sol still lingering in the hallway. The sunlight slipped through the blinds in skinny lines, cutting across the living room floor, touching his back as he tucked another shirt into the suitcase, like it was just another Saturday chore. It was Saturday. The kind where the air feels heavy with heat, but the ceiling fan still spins lazy like it's too tired to care. I'd just gotten back from Piggly Wiggly, grabbed tilapia, grits, and that same brand of white socks he swore by. The cashier, a girl barely 20, had smiled and asked, "You always get these for him, huh?" I smiled back, automatic. Every other Saturday. I'd been doing everything every other Saturday for years. Same routine, same house, same man. I folded his t-shirts into perfect rectangles, sleeves tucked in just so, made sure the remote sat on the arm of the recliner and that his work boots stayed by the mat, toes pointed straight like soldiers. Then he said it, like it was a fact, like he was doing me a favor by staying. For a second, the room went hollow. Even the TV felt quieter, like it was listening too. I swallowed the lump in my throat and set the towel down before it trembled out of my hand. We lived just outside Birmingham, Alabama, not far from Trussville. Brick ranch-style house, 3 bedrooms, 1 car in the driveway, one life that had slowly shrunk around me. Out back, a grill sat rusted shut, its lid crusted from summers we never got around to enjoying. The porch swing still creaked from where my mama used to sit and talk to the neighbors. Every time it moved in the wind, it felt like she was whispering, "You still here, baby?" I worked as a home aide, elder care mostly. Folks with dementia, arthritis, bad hips, and soft memories. I was good at it. The kind of good you don't brag about because it's quiet work. I listened when nobody else did. I rubbed lotion into swollen feet, lined up pill bottles by color, and learned how to tell the difference between pain and loneliness just by the way someone sighed. One woman, Miss Alberta, once looked me dead in the eye while I buttoned her blouse and said, "You ever feel like you got erased while you were still alive?" I remember blinking, pretending I didn't understand. "You mean forgotten?" She shook her head. "No, baby, erased." That word stuck with me. At home, I wasn't much more than quiet wallpaper. Daryl, my husband of 18 years, worked at a regional shipping company, 3rd shift, heavy equipment coordinator, always smelled like diesel and something metallic, like he'd been wrestling trucks in his sleep. He'd get home around 6:30 a.m., mumble about traffic on I-459, toss his boots near the door, and collapse on the couch like the world owed him rest. I made him eggs and coffee every morning, whether he spoke or not, whether he noticed or not. We used to be in love. I remember that part too vividly sometimes. Back when he drove that old burgundy Cutlass with the cracked dashboard and called me Peaches. Back when we'd park at the Chevron lot off Green Springs, eat nuggets out the bag and talk about moving to Atlanta, opening a small car wash or maybe a soul food spot. He said he'd name it Peaches and D just for me. We never made it to Atlanta. The Cutlass got sold. The car wash turned into a someday. And the man who once called me Peaches now brushed past me like I was the wall. I told myself it was stress, or the hours, or the heat. I gave him every excuse except the real one. The truth was, I was fading, and he liked it that way. My quiet made his world easier. My softness made his hard edges look normal. One afternoon at work, my coworker Kendra leaned over her styrofoam cup of soup and said, "Renee, you ever think about going back to school?" I laughed. "Girl, for what? So I can owe Sally Mae in my 50s?" She shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe just something for you. You always doing for everybody else. Don't seem like nobody doing for you." I didn't have an answer. I just stirred my yogurt till it looked like silence. That night, I ran a bath after Daryl left for his shift. I let the lavender bubbles reach my chin and stared at the ceiling until my skin wrinkled. I thought about Kendra, about Mama's porch swing, about the word erased. Then I thought about how Daryl had gone 3 straight days without saying more than "pass the salt." It's strange how quiet can start to sound like safety. I used to believe peace meant no yelling, no arguing, no broken plates. But now I wondered if peace was just silence, dressed up as obedience, and if I'd been mistaking fear for calm this whole time. The breaking point came on a Thursday. He was on the couch, half asleep, watching some repo show. His phone lit up beside him. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. But when you live with someone that long, you start to hear things even when they whisper. "Man, I'm telling you," he said, laughing low. "She ain't going nowhere. Ain't nobody else gonna want her." Pause. "Yep, I pay the bills. Cook don't even matter to me no more." My heart didn't drop. It froze. My fingers tightened around the basket of towels I was folding. His voice was muffled through the hall, but I could hear every word clear as day. He laughed again, a short, mean kind of laugh, like the kind a man makes when he knows he's winning. And I stood there, the good wife, the quiet one, listening to my husband tell somebody I was worthless. I didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't make a scene. I finished folding the towels, smoothed the edges, put his shirts away in order. Work shirts first, then the polos he liked to wear on weekends. I fried catfish, cooked cheese grits, and set his plate down just like always. But I didn't refill his water glass, didn't sit beside him while he ate, didn't ask about his day. When he finally looked up, mouth full of food, he said, "You all right?" "Mm-hmm." And that was it. Something in me had shifted, quietly but completely. 2 days later, I drove to Walmart on my off day. Didn't tell nobody. Didn't even grab a cart. Just walked slow down the aisles, feeling the air conditioning kiss my neck. I stopped in front of the office supplies section and picked up a black notebook. Thick pages, hard cover, $4.99. It felt solid in my hand, like something permanent. Then I wandered over to the clearance rack near women's robes. There it was. Lavender, soft, my favorite color, $11 even. I pressed it to my chest and smiled at the tag like it was a secret. When I got home, Daryl was still asleep. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the kitchen clock. I went to the table, opened that notebook, and wrote my name on the inside cover in blue ink. Renee Lawson. Plan A. I didn't know what the plan was yet, but for the first time in years, it was going to have my name on it. The first entry in that notebook was just one sentence. What if I stopped trying to be wanted? I stared at it a long while, let the words settle inside me like warm tea, heavy and quiet. The handwriting looked shaky, even though my hand was steady. The question felt like something whispered in church, simple but meant to change a whole life. I closed the notebook, slid it under my pillow, and sat in that silence for a while. The TV was off. The air conditioner hummed, uneven. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and gave up. That night, Daryl came home late, smelled like beer and gasoline. The door slammed a little too hard, like it had been holding in his frustration all evening. I didn't ask where he'd been, didn't ask why his shirt collar was wrinkled or why his eyes looked glassy. He didn't volunteer anything either. He walked past me without a word, kicked off his steel-toe boots so they landed by the wall, socks trailing behind like breadcrumbs. The house shook faintly when he turned the fan on high. I lay still, pretending to be asleep, though my eyes stayed wide open. The ceiling above us creaked with every slow rotation of that old fan. I listened to the rhythm of his breathing, the faint, offbeat sound of beer cans shifting in a plastic bag by the door. The silence between us felt heavier than ever, thick, like wet wool. I wasn't angry, not even hurt anymore. I was just clear, crystal clear. That weekend at church, I sat alone, third pew from the front, under the stained glass window with the pale yellow cross. Morning sunlight spilled through it and hit my shoulder, warm like a hand. The choir was midway through "I've Come Too Far to Turn Around," and their voices filled the sanctuary like wind pushing through an old house. Miss Geneva sat beside me. She'd known me since I was a teenager, back when I sang in the youth choir and thought life was supposed to turn out like one of those Tyler Perry plays. When the last note rang out, she leaned toward me and whispered, "You look tired, baby." I nodded. My voice came out soft. "I am." She pressed a peppermint into my palm, the kind wrapped in crinkly red and white plastic that makes more noise than it should, and said, "Keep living. Storms pass, but peace don't knock. You gotta build it brick by brick." I didn't cry, but something about the way she said "peace don't knock" stuck in me, like she was reminding me that waiting for happiness was a slow kind of dying. I held that peppermint all through service, rubbed it between my fingers till the edges turned warm. The next storm came 2 weeks later. We'd just gotten back from the church picnic over at Cosby Lake Park. I made my usual banana pudding, extra vanilla wafers, extra Cool Whip. Daryl didn't say a word to me the whole time. He stood off by the fried chicken table talking to a woman I didn't recognize. Slim, light-skinned, long braids, nails painted baby blue. He smiled while she talked. That smile I hadn't seen in years. I loaded the cooler into the trunk by myself, watched him lean in close enough for her to touch his arm. I said nothing, just drove home with the windows cracked, letting the sound of the wind drown out everything else. That night, after he showered, I passed by the bed and saw his phone light up on the nightstand. "T, you free now? She's still breathing?" Just that. One line, a joke, and my whole body went still. I didn't touch the phone, didn't scroll, didn't even blink for a second. The reflection of that message glowed on the mirror behind it, and it was like seeing a ghost. My own reflection caught between disbelief and peace. I looked up at myself in that same hallway mirror, face dry, edges soft, still wearing my church shoes, and for the first time in a long, long time. I didn't feel small. I felt awake. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, steam following him like a shadow, he saw me standing there. "You need something?" he asked, voice sharp, that half-irritated tone men use when they know they're wrong but want to stay in control. I just shook my head. "Don't start, Renee," he said, running the towel over his neck. "I'm tired." The room smelled like his cologne and betrayal. He looked up, maybe waiting for me to nag, to plead, to beg him to tell me what I already knew. When I didn't, his face twisted. "You know what?" he said. "You always been like this. Insecure, sensitive. That's why folks walk over you. That's why you stuck. Ain't nobody else gonna want you. I'm just the last fool who stayed." He said it like a preacher delivering a sermon. Final. Like that was the gospel truth. He thought it would break me. But it didn't. I reached down, picked up the towel he'd thrown on the bed, folded it in half, neat, straight corners, and said, "You're dripping." Then I turned around and walked out. That was the last time he ever saw me flinch. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was still pale, trying to decide if it wanted to rise. I tied my robe, padded into the kitchen, and fried 2 eggs. Over medium, just how I liked them. I sat at the table alone, ate slowly, let the quiet fill the room like music. When Daryl came out, he looked confused. No plate for me. I didn't even look up. "I figured you'd already eaten." He blinked, frowned, then grabbed a cereal box and poured the flakes straight into his mouth like a child. Sat down across from me. Chewed. Didn't say another word. It was small. But it was the first shift. That afternoon, I drove to the Regions Bank near Center Point Parkway. The teller, young woman, red nails, gold hoops, smiled like she had somewhere better to be. "Starting something new?" she asked while typing my name into the system. I smiled back a little. "Just starting something." She slid the paper across the counter. I signed it slow. Renee C. Lawson. In the neatest cursive I'd written in years, a new savings account. Quiet money. Nobody's business but mine. I set up an automatic deposit, $100 from every paycheck, the start of something sacred. At work, I picked up a few extra shifts, told Kendra I needed the hours. She didn't ask why. She just nodded, slid me the clipboard, and said, "Get that overtime, sis." One of my clients, Miss Ida May, was 84. Soft voice, skin like old paper, memory sharp as ever. Used to be a school teacher. One afternoon, while I was cleaning her kitchen, she tilted her head and said, "You got something on your spirit." I laughed. "Good or bad?" "Sounded like hope," she said, smiling slow, like she'd seen this movie before. Later that week, I helped her write birthday cards for her grandkids. Her handwriting was shaky, so I guided her fingers. Between cards, she looked up and said, "You ever think about doing this on your own?" "Doing what?" I asked. "Running your own care business. You got the hands, you got the heart." I laughed it off. "I don't know nothing about running no business." She patted my wrist, eyes soft. "Google do." That night, after I got home, I sat at the kitchen table with my old tablet and typed it in. How to start a caregiving LLC in Alabama. One click led to another. Next thing I knew, I was on the Jefferson County Clerk website, squinting at forms I barely understood. I registered Lawson Companion Care LLC for $117. Used my P.O. box at the UPS store on Chalkville Road. Didn't tell a soul, not even Kendra. Over the next month, I started building it out, piece by quiet piece. Ordered business cards from Vistaprint, white and lavender. Bought a secondhand tablet off Facebook Marketplace for $40 cash. Watched YouTube videos about client intake and home insurance. Every night after work, I'd light a vanilla candle, open my notebook, and write. Expenses, milestones, goals. One page read, 728 saved, 2 inquiries, 1 signed client. Another. He asked what I was always typing. I said grocery list. Let him think that. Meanwhile, Daryl kept unraveling, coming home later, talking louder, sleeping less. The colder I got, the more noise he made. My silence started sounding like thunder to him. One night, he snapped out of nowhere. "What's your problem lately?" I didn't even look up from my notebook. "I found peace," I said. "Don't worry, it ain't contagious." He stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. By October, I had 3 steady clients, a growing savings account, a small stack of lavender business cards in my purse, and a lawyer's number tucked between the pages of my notebook, a woman Miss Geneva knew from her prayer circle. "Just in case," she'd said. By then, every time Daryl left his phone face up on the table, I didn't look, didn't need to, because for the first time in my life, I no longer needed proof. I already had power. November came soft that year. Alabama don't get much fall, not the kind folks up north brag about, but that one gave us just enough. Cool air that smelled faintly of rain and wood smoke, gold leaves that danced before landing, and a kind of quiet that felt like it was holding its breath. I was holding mine too, because by then, the world outside hadn't changed. But the woman inside me had. I was still waking up early, still cooking breakfast, still letting the gospel hum from my phone while the coffee pot sputtered its last drop. But not for Daryl anymore. He could fix his own toast. Now it was eggs and turkey sausage for me, plated neatly on a floral dish I'd almost forgotten we owned. I'd eat at the kitchen table, robe tied, candle flickering beside me, journal open to a clean page. The smell of black pepper and butter floated through the air while Yolanda Adams whispered, "Open up your heart and let the Lord in." Some mornings I'd just sit there, staring at the ink stains on my fingertips, thinking about how peace doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly, like sunrise through thin curtains. That First week of November, I moved my things into the guest room. No announcement, no fight. Just folded my robe, my Bible, and my lavender body lotion into the dresser by the window. The air in that room felt lighter, like it had been waiting on me. When Daryl came home that Friday, he stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, eyes narrowing like he'd walked into a crime scene. "You moving out?" he asked, voice thick, caught between disbelief and pride. I didn't look up from my planner. Just needed a room with more light. He stared longer than usual, waiting for me to flinch, to smile, to explain. I didn't. I turned another page, circled a date with my blue pen, and let him stand there in silence until he left. That same week, the phone rang during dinner prep. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Miss Lawson." The voice on the other end trembled, sweet and syrupy. "This is Beatrice Cole. Ida May told me you're offering care services on your own now. My sister Dolores just got out the hospital and, well, our nerves ain't what they used to be. Think you could come by?" I smiled into the receiver. "Yes, ma'am, I'd be honored." I met her 2 days later. The Cole sisters lived in a small yellow house with lace curtains and the smell of corn pudding in the air. Dolores moved slow but smiled easy. Beatrice offered me tea before I even sat down. We talked about medication, fall risks, grocery schedules, and favorite TV shows. 3 days later, she handed me a handwritten check for $385. I drove straight to Regions Bank, deposited it myself. The receipt slid out of the machine warm, like it knew it was the start of something holy. Every step I took after that, I took in silence. Didn't make no Facebook post, didn't tell the church ladies, didn't even mention it to Kendra at work. I just kept building. I watched a YouTube tutorial on filing quarterly taxes, paused every few minutes to rewind and take notes, bought a used desktop computer from a retired pastor on Craigslist, met him at a Hardee's parking lot at 9 a.m. He handed me the tower wrapped in a towel, said, "She's slow, but she's faithful." She was. Next, I printed flyers on cream paper with purple ink, Lawson Companion Care, where dignity meets dependability. I slipped them into laundromats, tacked them to bulletin boards at Family Dollar, even slid one under the glass at the barber shop on Huffman Road. Each time I saw my logo, that soft purple lettering, I felt taller, like I'd finally stepped into my own name. Daryl didn't ask questions at first, too busy being moody. His job had rumors floating around, layoffs, management shifts. He came home smelling like stress, slammed the fridge door, complained about lazy young folks, then scrolled his phone till his thumb went numb. One night, while he microwaved a frozen burrito, he muttered, "This house feels different." I looked up from my laptop, the glow reflecting off my glasses. "Maybe you feel different," I said. He didn't respond, just stared, chewing slow, trying to figure out when the air in his own home stopped revolving around him. By mid-December, I had 6 steady clients. 3 lived alone, sweet souls who just wanted company while watching game shows. 2 had family that worked long hours and needed someone to check in during the day. And 1, Mr. Harmon, just wanted someone to read scripture with him twice a week. Mr. Harmon was 89, sharp as a tack. He'd sit by the window and listen while I read Psalms. "Read that one again," he'd say. "The one about still waters. I like that one." On Christmas Eve, he pressed a Sears shoebox into my hand. Inside was $40 and a peppermint. "Don't tell nobody I still keep cash," he whispered. I smiled, tucked it into my purse, and the next day I bought myself a silver necklace at Belk. Just one word on the charm, enough. The week after Christmas, Daryl got laid off. He came home early, face pale and tight, boots dragging. The TV light hit him just enough for me to see the defeat around his mouth. "They cut in departments," he said. "Told me this morning." I was at the dining table sorting invoices and receipts into neat piles. He waited for sympathy. I could feel it hanging between us like fog. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally. "Want me to fix you some tea?" He blinked. "That's it? What you want me to say?" "I don't know. Act like it matters. I put down my pen. It matters, just not more than my peace. He didn't like that. Over the next few days, he stomped around louder, slammed cabinet doors, made sideways comments under his breath, acted like my calm was an insult. But I stayed still. I cooked, I worked, I walked, and at night I slept like stone, because I knew now his chaos wasn't mine to carry. January rolled in with cold mornings and sharper instincts. One day, as I poured coffee into my travel mug, he watched me from the hallway. "You been working somewhere else?" I glanced up. "Why?" "Just wondering. You dressin' different. Smell like lavender and money." I smiled. "Appreciate the compliment." He squinted. "You got secrets?" I shrugged. "I got purpose." That answer shut him up for a while. But curiosity's a disease. It spreads when a man starts losing control. He started checking the mail more, asking who I was talking to on the phone, picking through the trash like he might find the old version of me hiding in it. So I bought a shredder from Office Depot, the kind that purrs low but eats everything you feed it. I kept my business files locked in a metal box under the bed in the guest room, filed taxes under Lawson Companion Care, LLC. Laminated my EIN number at the UPS store like it was a trophy, ordered new checks with my business name printed clean at the top. The first time I wrote one to myself, I paused, stared at the signature line until my eyes blurred. Renee C. Lawson, owner. I said it out loud once just to hear it. The words felt strange, then strong, then like home. In late February, Daryl found the file box. I was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes, when I heard the drawers open, papers shuffle, the hard sound of breathing when pride starts to crack. He stormed in, holding the folder like it was evidence. "What the hell is this?" I turned off the faucet, dried my hands slow. "Looks like paperwork." "Why didn't you tell me you had a business?" "Because it's mine." He stepped closer. "You living in my house, using my electricity, and starting secret companies?" I walked toward him, calm, steady, like I had all the time in the world. "This house is in both our names, but that business, that name, that work, that came from me. Not a single dollar of yours touched it." His voice cracked. "You trying to leave me?" I met his eyes, didn't blink. "I already did. You just didn't notice." He dropped the paper, stared at me like I'd turned into smoke, didn't say another word for 3 days. Meanwhile, life went on, bigger than him, quieter than pride. That week, I signed my first commercial contract with a small assisted living home on the edge of town. 12 residents, 2 part-time aides. I came in as care coordinator. That one contract paid more than what Daryl made in 3 months. I didn't brag, didn't post, didn't even smile too wide. I just transferred the money into my business account, logged it in QuickBooks, and the next day bought myself a new pair of Adidas sneakers, white with gold stripes, size 8, soft, quiet revenge. In March, I came home from Bible study late one night. The street was still and the air thick with magnolia. Daryl was sitting on the porch, boots on, elbows on his knees, staring into nothing. When I stepped up the stairs, he said, "I ever tell you I was proud of you?" I stopped. "No," I said, keys still in my hand. He nodded slowly. "Well, I guess I shoulda." I turned and looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the man I married or the one I used to wait on, just a man, sitting in his own silence. "You don't have to be proud," I said. "Just be out the way." Then I opened the door and walked inside, closed it gentle, not angry, just final. April brought the kind of southern rain that sounds like truth being washed down a tin roof, soft, relentless, cleansing. It wasn't the angry kind of storm. It was that steady, soul-deep kind that makes you stop mid-step and listen. The kind that makes you want to breathe slower, pray softer. Remember who you used to be before all the noise. I stood in the guest room that morning with the window cracked open, watching the rain fall over everything. The mailbox, the grass, the cracked driveway where Daryl used to park with pride. Now his car just sat there like a guest who didn't know when to leave. That day marked exactly 1 year since I'd opened my first client file. No balloons, no candles, no "You Go Girl" post on Facebook, just me. And the sound of the rain. I didn't bake a cake, but I did drive to Lowe's after my morning rounds and bought myself a white orchid, $18.99 plus tax. The cashier wrapped it in brown paper and said, "These can be tricky to keep alive." I smiled. I've been through worse. When I got home, I set it right on the windowsill beside my Bible and bank statements. The petals looked too soft to last, but there it was, standing tall anyway. Just like me. Daryl still lived in the house, but we didn't live together. He stayed in the master. I stayed in the guest. We passed each other like polite strangers at a grocery store. Small nods, no eye contact. Some mornings, while I packed my work tote, he'd ask, "You workin' today?" And I'd answer, calm and simple, always. He started cooking for himself, burning bacon, leaving laundry in baskets until the clothes looked tired. Sometimes he'd sit on the porch all day, legs stretched out, watching the neighborhood like it owed him something. But I didn't engage. Not out of bitterness, out of peace. It's a strange thing, learning that distance can be holy, that silence can be a boundary, that letting go quietly can be louder than any goodbye. One Tuesday evening, I came home from a client visit and found him sitting at the dining table. No TV, no beer, just him. Slouched forward, elbows on the table, my business card in his hand. He turned it over like it was evidence. "Why didn't you tell me you made it this far?" he asked. His voice was softer than usual, tired, almost human. I set my purse down, took off my jacket, and didn't even slow my step. "Because I didn't need your applause." He looked up, frowning, as if searching my face for something familiar. "I'm not mad," he said. "I'm not scared," I replied. His eyes tightened. "You always been this cold?" I stopped by the hallway light, turned to face him. My voice didn't rise. "No, Daryl, I've always been this clear. You just never asked who I was underneath the silence." He leaned back, chair creaking under the weight of all the things he never said. After a long pause, he sighed. "Look, I know I said some things." "You said them," I interrupted. "You meant them, and now I'm free from needing to change your mind." The words hung there between us, heavy and honest. He blinked, slow, like that stung worse than any slap could have. That night, the rain started again, the kind that hits the roof soft at first, then builds till it feels like release. I sat by my window, sipping chamomile tea, thinking about all the versions of myself I'd outgrown. Later that week, I drove to a small law office downtown. One Miss Geneva had recommended. The place smelled like eucalyptus and printer paper. My attorney, a black woman about my age named Rachel, wore gold bangles and confidence like perfume. "So," she said, tapping her pen against her pad, "you sure you don't want to file for divorce?" "Not yet," I said, "but I want him out of my peace." She smiled, that knowing kind of smile women give each other when they've both seen too much and survived anyway. We filed for legal separation, drafted a motion to transfer the property title into my name. She read through the mortgage paperwork, eyebrows raised. "You've been paying this alone for how long?" 4 years, I said. "Every bill, every repair, every late-night call to the plumber." Rachel exhaled. "Then this house already been yours." It took 2 weeks, just 2 quiet, steady weeks, before I got the letter from the Jefferson County Clerk's office, stamped, sealed, mine. When I opened the envelope, I didn't cry. I just sat there, fingertips tracing the embossed seal, heart steady. I didn't wave the deed in Daryl's face, didn't gloat, didn't toss him out like a movie scene. I simply placed the envelope on the kitchen table with a note that read, "When you're ready to move out, let me know. I'll give you time, but not forever." He found it the next morning, didn't yell, didn't crumple it, just stared at it a long while, shoulders slumped, Like maybe he finally understood that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means done. 2 weeks later, he packed a black duffel bag, grabbed his work boots, wiped his forehead with the back of his hand like a man trying to erase something. He paused by the doorway. "Take care of yourself, Renee." I looked up from my paperwork. "I've been doing that." He nodded once, didn't slam the door, didn't look back. He just left. And when that front door clicked shut, the whole house exhaled. The next morning, I made pancakes with fresh strawberries and hot coffee, real butter, real syrup. Ate them slow at the head of the table, my table. Then I flipped open a folder labeled Expansion Plan Q3. 2 new aides, 1 new transport van, an office space in 5 Points South. Every line had my handwriting on it. Steady, certain, unshakable. That afternoon, I carried my robe and lotion into the master bedroom. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old cologne. I opened the windows, let the air sweep through, and stood there a moment, listening to the sound of my own home breathing again. That night, I slept with the fan on low. No snoring, no tension, no noise, just peace. Summer came slow and sweet. Long days, light meals, soft laughter. I grilled chicken on Sundays, watered the lawn in the evenings, took long walks with Miss Ida May on Fridays. Her knees popped with every step, but she'd say, "That's just my rhythm, baby." Business kept growing. Word started spreading. One of my flyers found its way to a Methodist church across town. The next week, I got 3 calls in one day. Women saying, "We heard you care with dignity. We heard you're one of us." I always smiled and said, "Yes, ma'am. I care like somebody prayed for you." Because somebody once did. One humid evening in July, I came home, dropped my purse on the counter, and saw a text from an unknown number. "Just wondering how you been. Miss the smell of your cooking." I stared at it for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't block it. Didn't reply either. Some doors don't need slamming. They just need locking. In August, I closed on a duplex outside Irondale. One side for me, one to rent. The backyard had crepe myrtles and a stone path lined with lavender. I walked it barefoot the first night, the scent wrapping around me like peace itself. Paid for it through Lawson Companion Care, LLC, business credit, clean and clear. When the realtor handed me the keys, she said, "Most folks got folks backing them. You did this solo?" I smiled. No, I did this silently. By the time fall came back around, I had my own office, just one small suite, but it felt like heaven. A little lavender sign on the door, a waiting room with chairs I picked out myself, cream leather, gold trim, a faint smell of vanilla candles. Clients came in steady, checks cleared weekly, and respect, real earned respect, showed up daily. And I never had to raise my voice to get it. The following Thanksgiving, the house smelled like sage, sweet potatoes, and quiet. I had the oven going since 7 a.m., turkey browning slow, yams bubbling in cinnamon and butter, cornbread cooling on the counter like a secret I'd finally learned how to keep. It was the good kind of quiet, not the kind you sit in waiting for someone to apologize, not the kind that hums heavy with all the things you'll never say. This was the kind that means peace has finally unpacked her bags and made herself at home. The table was set for 4. Miss Ida May came wearing her sunflower hat, the same one she wore to every doctor's appointment. Her perfume announced her before she even knocked, white diamonds and peppermint oil. She hugged me like a daughter and said, smells like you got heaven in that oven." My neighbor Sheila brought over green beans and her cousin's banana pudding. Now, I didn't make it, she warned, but I watched her like a hawk. And Kendra, Lord, Kendra showed up late as always. Jangling bracelets, loud laughter, and a bottle of Welch's sparkling grape juice held high like it was Dom Perignon. "Don't act like I didn't bring the good stuff," she said, kissing my cheek. We prayed around that table, hands linked tight. Miss Ida May started it, voice trembling but strong. Lord, thank you for roofs that hold, hearts that heal, and women that rise. We said amen in unison, and it felt like something holy cracked open right there in my dining room. We laughed. We passed rolls and sweet tea and memories. That didn't hurt anymore. Kendra teased me for the store-bought cranberry sauce. Sheila hummed over the sweet potatoes. And Ida Mae said, "If peace had a flavor, baby, this would be it." And not once did I think about where Daryl was. When everyone left, I cleaned the kitchen slow. I wrapped leftovers in foil, wiped down the counters, stacked the dishes like a meditation. The house was warm, lit only by the soft glow of the under-cabinet lights and the flicker of a vanilla candle I'd placed in the window. I could still hear the ghost of laughter echoing faintly in the walls, the good kind, the healed kind. When everything was finally still again, I sat in the living room, legs tucked under me, quilt on my lap. A soft jazz playlist flowed from the Bluetooth speaker, Billie Holiday's voice like honey over smoke. I reached for my newest notebook. On the cover, Lawson Companion Care. Year 2. Vision. I flipped to the second page and found what I'd written a week earlier. Grace first, boundaries always. Rest is part of the plan. I smiled, underlined it twice. Around 7:45 that evening, my phone buzzed. Blocked caller ID. One new voicemail. I didn't answer, didn't even check it until later while folding towels. It was Daryl. "Hey, I don't know if you still got this number, just wanted to say, Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you're doing good. I drove past the house last week. Looks peaceful." A pause. His breathing filled the silence. "I saw the sign out front, Lawson Companion Care. Didn't know you were that serious about it. Guess I underestimated you. Anyway, yeah, just checking in." Click. That was it. No apology, no request, just a small ripple of recognition from a man who once thought I'd never rise. I didn't call back. Didn't feel angry. Didn't feel smug. Didn't even feel curious. I felt complete. Because peace doesn't need applause. It just needs to be kept. A week later, I found myself walking back into the Jefferson County Clerk's office. The same beige walls, the same humming fluorescent lights, but this time I stood taller, filed official articles for something new, Lawson Housing and Care Group, not just companion care now, but home, affordable housing for elderly women on fixed incomes, duplexes, shared spaces, care-based co-living, owned and operated by Black women for Black women. The young clerk at the counter looked over my papers, smiled, and said, "You building something real, ma'am." I smiled back, signing my name slow and deliberate. I already did. By Christmas, I had hired my first full-time manager. Her name was Danielle, early 30s, soft-spoken, eyes bright with ideas. The kind of woman who took notes in cursive and prayed under her breath before big meetings. She reminded me of myself, only freer, the version I didn't know I was allowed to become at her age. During training, I told her, whatever they try to take from you, your time, your voice, your spirit, you get to keep your boundaries. That's your inheritance. Don't spend it too quick. She smiled like she'd just been handed a key. Then she pulled out her notebook and wrote it down word for word. That New Year's Eve, I sat on the porch with my orchid. It had bloomed again. Soft white petals, open and sure. I ran a finger along the stem, tracing the same patience it took to rebuild my life. Fireworks cracked faintly in the distance. Somebody down the block was grilling ribs under a patio heater, music drifting through the night air. Maze and Frankie Beverly singing about joy and pain. I took a slow sip of hot tea and looked up at the stars. Didn't make a resolution, didn't need to. I just whispered, "Thank you," into the night. Because I had done what he said I couldn't. No, I wasn't some trophy on a man's arm. I wasn't waiting for approval dressed up as affection. I wasn't chasing love in the comment section. I wasn't proving anything to anybody. I had chosen me. With every folded towel, every saved dollar, every silent morning, I refused to beg to be seen. I had built a life where I was wanted by myself, and that was more than enough. Sometimes I walk past the mirror in the hallway and don't even recognize the woman standing there, not because she's changed so much, but because she finally looks alive. Now, some folks might say I wasted 18 years. Stayed too long, waited too quiet. But I say, those years taught me how to listen, how to move without noise, how to recognize the sound of peace when it finally arrived. Because real power doesn't yell, it whispers. It moves through rooms like warm light. It signs its own name on deeds and bank slips. It feeds people and calls it ministry. It answers the phone in its own business name. It shows up to its own Thanksgiving table with joy in its bones, and it never, never waits for permission. I closed my notebook, blew out the candle beside me, and watched the last spark of the wick fade into smoke. The house felt full, even in its quiet. Somewhere in the distance a siren wailed, a train passed, and the wind brushed against the porch rail, soft as prayer. I looked up at the night sky one last time and whispered, "We made it." Then I smiled, not because it was easy, but because it was mine. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.